rain from last night had stopped, but inside Tieu knew the storm had never really ended. In the cold hallway of the hospital, she sat quietly beside Truong, the man lying still, his shoulder wrapped in white bandages, his breathing weak and shallow. All night, Tieu knew hadn't slept, afraid that if she closed her eyes for even a second, he might slip away forever. When dawn finally broke, Truong slowly opened his eyes. His gaze met hers, pale, exhausted, yet glowing through her tears. She burst into tears, gripping his hand tightly. "Please, don't leave me again." He smiled faintly, his voice trembling and hoarse. "I'm still here," Tieu knew. But deep inside, there was something neither of them had said, because the real wound wasn't on his shoulder, but buried deeper in both their hearts. Would love be strong enough to hold them together after all the pain? If you believe that as long as we have each other, every pain will fade, then hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next episode of A Miracle in the Winter Night. The rain had stopped, but the morning sky was still covered in a heavy gray mist. The hospital hallway was silent, broken only by the soft sound of a hospital bed's wheels rolling over the cold tile floor. In the last room down the hall, Truong lay there, his face pale, his shoulder wrapped in white bandages, his breathing steady but weak. Tieu knew sat beside him, her eyes never leaving his face. She had stayed awake all night, terrified that if she closed her eyes, he might disappear again. Every time the heart monitor beeped, her own heart skipped a beat. But soon, those steady beeps became the only sound that could calm her. On the table, a bowl of porridge had gone cold. The doctor had told her to feed him once he woke up, but since morning, Truong hadn't said a word. He looked peaceful in his sleep, but Tieu knew beneath those bandages was a pain she could never touch. She gently took his hand, the same hand that once built their home, swung a hammer, held her close now, so frail and fragile. "Does it hurt?" The words caught in her throat, unable to come out. The door opened softly. A nurse stepped in to check on him. "He's recovering well," the young woman smiled. "The wound's clean, no infection. Just needs a few more days of rest." Tieu nodded quietly, but her heart wouldn't settle, because she knew the real wound wasn't in his shoulder. It was deeper buried inside his heart. When Truong finally woke up, the afternoon sun was casting a golden glow through the curtains. His eyes slowly moved around the room, then stopped on Tieu, who had fallen asleep with her head resting by the bed. Strands of hair brushed her cheek, her lashes still damp with tears. He tried to lift his hand to move her hair, but the pain in his shoulder stopped him halfway. Tieu stirred awake, and when she saw his eyes open, she burst into tears. Her tears fell hot and fast onto the back of his hand. "I'm okay now," Truong whispered, his voice rough and thin, like wind scraping against a wall. She didn't answer, just shook her head and buried her face against his chest, sobbing silently. In that moment, every fear, every sleepless night, every ounce of despair melted into tears. Truong said nothing. He just let her cry, his other hand weakly tightening around her shoulder. He knew that bullet hadn't just torn through his flesh. It had shattered her heart too. A few days later, Truong was finally able to sit up. Tieu fed him spoon by spoon, patient and gentle, like she was caring for a child. She didn't say much, but her eyes held 1,000 words she couldn't bring herself to speak. Outside, the rain tapped softly against the roof. Rain always brought her back to the old days when Truong was still strong, when they sold oranges together and dreamed about finishing their little wooden house at the foot of the hill. That house was still there, unfinished. And she knew that once he recovered, they'd go back and finish it together. I was so scared, she whispered, her voice trembling. I was afraid of losing you. Truong turned to her, his eyes calm and kind, just like always. I know, he said, smiling faintly, his voice weak but warm. I was scared too. Scared of making you cry again. They fell silent. In that white hospital room, only the sound of rain and their heartbeats filled the space. That afternoon, the doctor came in. He's very lucky, he told Tieu. The bullet only grazed him, but it was too close. A few minutes later, and it could have been a different story, she bowed her head, thanking him quietly. But when the doctor left, her tears started to fall again. She looked at Truong, the man she had loved with all her youth, and realized that love didn't need promises. It only needed to stay. Tieu, he called softly. She looked up, and he met her eyes with quiet sincerity. Thank you, he said, for not letting go. She smiled through her tears. You're alive. That's enough. He reached out and held her hand, a weak, trembling grip, yet firm, as if afraid that if he let go, they'd lose each other forever. Outside, the sunset painted the window red. The rain had stopped, and the sky was beginning to clear. That night, the little room glowed under the soft yellow light. Outside, the wind slipped through the window frame, carrying the gentle chill of late winter. Tieu still sat there quietly, afraid to disturb his peaceful sleep. He lay on his side, his face thin and tired from the pain, yet somehow calm, gentle, in a way that made her chest ache. Each steady breath he took felt like a lullaby, making her heart tremble, full of love and gratitude. She leaned down slightly, her hair falling softly onto his shoulder. Her small hand brushed through his messy black hair and came to rest over the bandaged wound. The warmth of his body seeped into her palm, faint but alive, a quiet reminder that he was still here, still fighting beside her. Tieu smiled gently. Her eyes softened as she looked at the man who had once shielded her from gunfire, who had gritted his teeth through pain just to keep her from being afraid. Outside, the moon had just risen over the distant hills. Its pale light spilled into the room, touching his tired face and casting everything in a soft, misty calm, the kind that comes only after a storm. She closed her eyes and drifted back to their old days, when he was healthy, when they went to the market together, laughing by the fish stalls, or sat by the fire listening to the wood crackle. Back then, they thought happiness was something far away, something they had to chase. Now she understood, being able to sit here next to him, listening to the sound of his breathing, that was the miracle. Hey, she whispered, her voice barely louder than the wind. I was so scared that one day I wouldn't hear your voice again. But seeing you peaceful like this, I know now. Love is stronger than fear. Her tears fell not from sadness, but from gratitude. Grateful that he was alive. Grateful that they had another chance to love deeper and more completely than before. Truong stirred his arm instinctively, tightening around her. That small warmth made every worry fade away. She rested her head on his shoulder, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the sound of life, of faith, of a love that had survived pain and still refused to fade. Outside, the wind kept blowing. The trees swayed, and the moon hung high above. And within the whisper of the wind, she could almost hear the words, "Pain is only a test, but love is the miracle that keeps us together." She smiled through her tears and whispered back, "Yes, it really is a miracle, and I'll never let it slip away again." That night, Tieu didn't sleep. She just sat there, holding his hand, the same hand that had once been ice cold in pain, now slowly warming again. With every passing second, she could feel life returning to him and to herself. Sometimes, happiness doesn't come from anything grand. It comes from a breath, a touch, a look that says, "We still have each other."